Our objectives in this lesson is to convert a rational number in fraction form to a decimal number, to convert a terminating or repeating decimal to a rational number in fraction form, or to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. We're going to begin by changing a percent to a decimal. So to change a percent to a decimal, all you have to remember is that you're going to go 2 to the left. In this example, we're going to convert a percent to a decimal. So to do so, all you have to do is step 1, drop the percent symbol, because you don't need it anymore. If you're going to turn it into a decimal, you can't have a decimal and both are percent. So you will drop the percent, and then from that point where it was, you're going to move 2 places to the left and then go ahead and insert your decimal point. Let's do an example and it'll make more sense. So we want to write 27% as a decimal. So all we have to do, step 1, go ahead and get rid of the percent symbol because you don't need it anymore. You can't have both. And from that point, we're going to move 2 to the left. And it's always to the left to when you want to turn it into a decimal. So moving 2 to the left, place our decimal there. And that is our decimal. To write it, it's 0.27. It's always customary to put that extra 0 there in front there of the decimal point. It doesn't change the value of it, but that's the most common way you are going to see it written. So 0.27. Let's do 2 more examples. Now notice in these 2 examples here, you see a decimal and a percent where you have both. But when you have both, that number is still, right now, it is a percent. Look at the first example, that's 2.67%. 2.67%. If you were to estimate that, that's approximately 3%. So it is still a percent. And the same thing for the other one, 0.43%. It is still a percent. And what we want to do is we want to convert these to decimals, which means we're still going to have to move 2 to the left. And we're also going to drop the percent symbol if we're going to turn it into a decimal. So starting with the first example, drop the percent symbol. Now from that point, and it is not from the percent point at this time. This time, if it has a decimal, you move from where the decimal place is. Again, very important. If it has a decimal in the percent, when you change it to a decimal and you move the 2 places, you start where the decimal point is, not where the percent symbol. Start where the decimal is. So from that decimal point, I'm going to move over 2 to the left, 1, 2, fill all empty loops with zeros. So that means we need to fill this empty loop here with a 0. And we're also, remember, it is most common to write a 0 out in front. So when we write it, the number is going to be 0.0267. Now we have converted it to a decimal. Let's do the last example, 0.43. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of the percent symbol because we want to turn it to a decimal. So again, from that point of the decimal, you're going to move 2 over, 1, 2. Make sure you fill all empty loops with a 0 and go ahead and put your standard 0 out front. So when we convert it to a decimal, it becomes 0.0043. And there you have it, changing from percent to decimal. And now we're going to learn how to change a decimal to a percent. So we're going to do the very opposite. Converting a number from a decimal to a percent is the very opposite of what we just did with going from percent to decimal. When we go from percent to decimal, we move 2 to the left, recall, and now in these examples, we're going to change from decimal to a percent, which means we move 2 to the right. So let me go over the steps. Step 1 is to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. And then you're going to place your percent symbol at the end of the number. Also keep in mind, if you ever have any empty loops, you need to fill those empty spaces with zeros. The other thing to note is that as you're moving that decimal point, if you move that decimal point and it falls behind all of your numbers, then you will drop it and get rid of it, because again, you can't have it and the percent, both of them, in the back. You have one or the other. Now if it falls in between a number, then you will keep your decimal. Okay, let's do some examples and it'll make sense. So the first example we have is 0.529, and we want to turn that into a percent. So from that decimal point, we're going to move 2 to the right, so that would be 1, 2, and then we're going to, because moving over 2 places, we are not behind all the numbers. We are not at the end. So that means in this case, you will keep the decimal, and in addition to that, you will place your percent symbol in the back of all the numbers at the end. So when you convert it, it then becomes 52.9%. And no, you're not going to keep that extra 0 out in front. That is only in a case where a number is a decimal. If it is a whole number, such as this one, 52.9, then you don't have that 0 out front. So here we have it, 52.9%. Let's do the next example. We want to write 3 as a percent. So you say to yourself, well, I want to move the decimal place 2 to the right. Well, where I don't see a decimal place. Well, recall, when you have a whole number, that the decimal place is in the back of the number. For example, it's the same as, okay, you say if I have a $5 in my pocket, I have a 5 in my pocket, or 5 in my purse, that's the same as writing it as 5.00. The decimal is assumed to be in the back. You know it is implied to be in the back, not assumed. It is implied to be in the back. So yes, 3, it's implied that the decimal is in back of the 3. So from that point, we're going to move from the back 2 places. And then remember, we're going to fill all empty loops with zeros. So when we do so, that's going to leave us with 300%. And there you have it, writing numbers from a decimal to a percent. And now we're going to learn how to change a fraction to a percent. So to change a fraction to a percent, all you have to do, step 1, is to divide. You're going to divide top divided by the bottom. So change the fraction into a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. Once you do that, you're going to get what is called a decimal. Recall in previous lesson we talked about terminating and repeating decimal. Once you get your decimal, you're just going to go ahead and move 2 places to the right and turn it into a percent. So let's do this example. We have 3 divided by 5. Go ahead and do that on your calculator and tell me what you get. So 3 divided by 5, top divided by the bottom, is going to give you 0.6 you should have on your calculator. And now we want to turn that into a percent. So recall, to turn a decimal into a percent, you remember it's going to be 2. It's either 2 to the left or 2 to the right. So what would it be for a percent? If you said 2 to the right, you are correct. So let's go ahead and move 2 to the right. Remember, fill all empty loops with zeros, those empty spaces. So what we have then is 60%. So 3/5 is the same as 60%. So let's say, for example, a person was solving, there was a quiz and there were 5 problems, and a student got 3 out of 5 of those problems correct. Then that means that they had a 60% in terms of their score. And there you have it. Next, we want to change a percent into a fraction. So to change a percent into a fraction, the step is, step 1, drop the percent symbol because you don't need it if you're going to write it as a fraction. And then take that number and write that number over 100. And then simplify your fraction. So let's do an example so it makes more sense. We want to convert 25% into a fraction and then write the fraction in simplest forms. So step 1 would be to go ahead and get rid of the percent symbol and just write the 25 over 100. And now all we need to do is reduce that fraction. So we want to cancel out any common factor. Well, inside 100 is 25 times 4, because recall, 4 times 25, 4 quarters is $1. So 25 times 4 on the bottom, so that means that you will have a common factor of 25. So once I cancel a 25 out of the top and a 25 out of the bottom, what I am left with is 1/4. So 25% is the same as 1/4.